When everyone laughed at her dreams, she whispered a promise that would change everything. Sometimes the quietest threats become the loudest victories. Lisa had always been the one with big ideas in her family. At 28, she worked at a small tech company doing basic marketing tasks, but her heart wasn't really in it. Every evening after work, she would come home to her tiny apartment and work on something she truly cared about, a business plan for her own clothing line. This wasn't just any clothing line, though. Lisa wanted to create clothes that didn't harm the environment. She spent months researching suppliers who used organic cotton, factories that treated workers fairly, and ways to make beautiful clothes without destroying the planet. Her laptop was filled with spreadsheets, contact information for manufacturers, and detailed plans about how much everything would cost. The problem was, nobody took her seriously. Her boyfriend David would nod politely when she talked about her ideas, but she could see in his eyes that he thought it was just another one of her phases. Her best friend Jenny always changed the subject when Lisa brought up her business plans. Even her own parents would smile and pat her head like she was still a child playing dress-up. Lisa tried not to let it bother her. After all, she had tried other things before. There was that time she took pottery classes for 3 months. Then she started a blog about cooking healthy meals, but only posted twice before giving up. She even bought an expensive camera to become a photographer, but it now sat collecting dust in her closet. But this felt different. This clothing line wasn't just a hobby or a random interest. Lisa genuinely believed she could help change how people thought about fashion. She had real numbers, real contacts, and a real plan. Yet nobody seemed to notice how much work she had put into this. The breaking point came on a Saturday evening. David had invited some of his work friends over for dinner at his apartment. Lisa was excited because she thought this would be a good chance to talk to successful business people about her ideas. Maybe they would see what others couldn't. As they sat around David's dining table eating takeout Chinese food, Lisa found the perfect moment to share her vision. She started explaining how fast fashion was destroying the environment, how her clothing line could offer beautiful alternatives that people would actually want to wear. At first, the conversation seemed promising. David's colleagues nodded and asked a few questions. But as Lisa continued talking, she noticed their expressions changing. The polite smiles became forced. People started checking their phones. One woman actually yawned. When Lisa mentioned that she was looking for investors, David suddenly laughed out loud. Not a supportive laugh, but the kind of laugh you make when someone tells a joke. Lisa always has some new project cooking, he said to his friends, like she wasn't even sitting right there. Last month it was photography. Before that it was cooking blogs. This month it's saving the world through t-shirts. The entire table erupted in laughter. Lisa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She tried to smile along, but inside, something was breaking. These weren't just random strangers making fun of her dreams. This was her own boyfriend, the person who was supposed to support her most. She excused herself to go to the bathroom, but really she just needed to get away from that table. Looking at herself in David's bathroom mirror, Lisa saw someone she barely recognized. When had she become the person everyone laughed at? When had her dreams become entertainment for dinner parties? After the guests left that evening, David was in an unusually good mood. He hummed while doing dishes, probably thinking the evening had gone perfectly. He had impressed his colleagues. Everyone had laughed at his jokes, and now they were alone. Again, Lisa sat on his couch staring at her laptop screen. Her business plan was still open, page after page of research, calculations, and genuine hope. Months of work that David had just dismissed as another project in front of his friends. "That was fun tonight," David called from the kitchen. "I think my boss really liked you. You were so passionate about that clothing thing, not business plan, not her dream. Just a thing." Lisa closed her laptop slowly. Something had shifted inside her during dinner. All her life, she had been looking for approval from other people. She wanted her family to be proud, her friends to be supportive, her boyfriend to believe in her. But what if their approval wasn't what she needed? What if the only person who needed to believe in Lisa's dreams was Lisa herself? She stayed quiet for the rest of the evening, but her mind was racing. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would stop asking permission to chase her dreams. Tomorrow she would stop waiting for other people to take her seriously. As David brushed his teeth before bed, he had no idea that his girlfriend was planning something that would change both their lives forever. He had no clue that his casual dismissal had just lit a fire that would burn brighter than he could ever imagine. Lisa had spent 28 years being the person everyone expected her to be. The dreamer who never followed through. The girl with big ideas but no action. The woman who needed approval before taking any risks. But sitting in that living room, listening to David hum cheerfully in the bathroom, Lisa made a decision that would surprise everyone who thought they knew her. She was done being underestimated. She was done being the entertainment at dinner parties. It was time to show everyone exactly how serious she could be. The next morning would bring conversations that would change everything. But tonight, Lisa simply sat in the quiet darkness of David's apartment, feeling something new growing inside her chest. Not hope this time, but determination. Cold, focused, unstoppable determination. Nobody would ever laugh at her dreams again. Lisa woke up the next morning feeling different. She had barely slept, her mind spinning with thoughts and plans all night long. David's apartment felt strange to her now, like she was seeing it for the first time. The expensive furniture, the perfectly organized kitchen, the framed photos of David with his successful friends. Everything looked exactly the same, but somehow felt completely foreign. David was already in the kitchen making coffee, humming that same cheerful tune from the night before. He seemed completely unaware that anything had changed. In his mind, last night had been a success. His friends had laughed. Everyone had a good time. And life was moving along just as it always did. Lisa sat at his kitchen table, watching him move around with his usual morning routine. Coffee first, then toast with exactly 2 spoonfuls of jam. Check his phone for work emails while eating. Everything perfectly predictable, just like he expected her to be. "Morning, beautiful," David said without looking up from his phone. "Coffee's almost ready. I was thinking we could go to that new brunch place today. Jenny said she might join us." Lisa didn't respond immediately. She was studying David's face, the way he smiled without really seeing her, the way he assumed she would just go along with whatever he suggested. How long had he been treating her like a supporting character in his own life story? "We need to talk," Lisa said quietly. Something in her voice made David look up from his phone. "Talk about what? Is this about last night? Because if you're upset about the investor comment, I was just being realistic. You know I support your hobbies." "My hobbies?" Lisa felt that same fire from last night starting to burn again. "David, I wasn't talking about hobbies last night. I was talking about my business plan. 8 months of research, real suppliers, actual numbers. Did you even listen to what I was saying?" David set down his coffee cup, and Lisa could see him, getting ready to use his patient, reasonable voice. The voice he used when he thought she was being emotional about something unimportant. "Look, babe, I love that you're passionate about things. It's one of the things I adore about you. But let's be honest here. You've started a lot of projects over the years. Remember the photography phase? The cooking blog? I just don't want you to get your hopes up too high and then get disappointed when—" He trailed off, but Lisa knew exactly what he was going to say. "When you give up just like you always do. When you move on to the next shiny idea. When you prove once again that you're not serious about anything." "When what, David?" Lisa's voice was still quiet, but there was something underneath it that made David pause. "When I fail? When I prove that you're right to not take me seriously? When I confirm that I'm just the dreamy girlfriend who can't stick with anything?" "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is." Lisa stood up from the table. "That's exactly what you meant. And it's what you've always meant. Every time I've shared an idea with you, every time I've gotten excited about something, you've been waiting for me to give up. You've been counting on it." David was looking at her with genuine confusion now, like she had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. In his world, this was how things worked. He was the practical one. She was the dreamer. He kept them grounded, she provided the entertainment. It was a comfortable dynamic that had worked for 3 years. Lisa, you're being dramatic. I'm just trying to protect you from getting hurt. These big business dreams, they almost never work out. I've seen the statistics. I'm being realistic because I care about you. Lisa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You care about the version of me that fits into your life perfectly. The version that has cute little projects that don't threaten anything or change anything. The version that needs your protection from her own ridiculous dreams. She walked over to where her laptop bag was sitting by the door. Inside was everything she had been working on. Her real work, not the marketing tasks she did at her day job, but the future she had been building. Piece by piece, what are you doing? David asked, and for the first time that morning he sounded uncertain. Lisa turned around to face him. He was standing in his perfect kitchen in his perfect apartment, holding his perfect cup of coffee, and she realized she had never seen him look truly surprised before. Everything in David's world was predictable, manageable, safe. That was about to change. Want me to show you how serious I am? She whispered. The words came out so quietly that David had to lean forward to hear them, but something about her tone, something about the way she was looking at him made his heart start racing. Not with excitement, but with the sudden uncomfortable realization that he might have pushed something too far. Lisa's dark eyes held an intensity he had never seen before. In 3 years of dating, he had seen her excited, disappointed, frustrated, happy, but never this. Never this cold, focused determination that made him take an actual step backward. Lisa, what are you talking about? I didn't mean to upset you. If this clothing thing is really important to you, clothing thing. Lisa repeated his words back to him, and David immediately knew he had said the wrong thing again. Not a business, not a plan, not 8 months of work. A thing. She was gathering her belongings now, moving with a precision and purpose that David had never seen from her before. Usually when Lisa was upset, she would cry or argue or try to make him understand her feelings. This was different. This was scary. Where are you going? David asked. Let's talk about this. We can figure it out. Lisa paused at the door, her hand on the handle. When she looked back at him, David saw something in her expression that made him understand for the first time that this wasn't just another argument they would resolve by evening. You'll see, she said, and her voice was calm now, almost peaceful. You'll all see. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet apartment. David stood alone in his kitchen, coffee growing cold in his hands, staring at the door Lisa had just walked through. He had no idea that she wouldn't be walking back through it again. Lisa didn't drive home after leaving David's apartment. Instead, she found herself sitting in her car outside a small coffee shop downtown, staring at the building she had been visiting secretly for the past 2 months. Above the coffee shop, accessible through a narrow staircase on the side of the building, was a tiny office space that she had been renting with money from her savings account. Nobody knew about this place. Not David, not Jenny, not her parents. It was her secret headquarters, the one place in the world where she could work on her business plan without judgment, interruption, or well-meaning advice about being realistic. Lisa climbed the creaky stairs to the second floor, her hands shaking slightly as she unlocked the door marked Suite 2B. The space was small, barely bigger than David's walk-in closet, but it was hers. The walls were covered with fabric samples, sketches of clothing designs, and printouts of her financial projections. Her desk was an old folding table she had bought at a garage sale, but her laptop sat on it like a command center for launching her dreams into reality. This morning felt different, though. For 2 months she had been coming here to plan and dream and hope. Today she was here to act. Lisa sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. Her business plan filled the screen. Pages and pages of research about sustainable fashion, supplier, contacts in Peru and India, manufacturing costs, marketing strategies, everything she would need to turn threads of change from an idea into a real company. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Can we please talk about this? I don't understand. What happened this morning? Lisa looked at the message for a long moment, then turned her phone face down on the desk. She had spent 3 years trying to make David understand her dreams. 3 years of explaining and justifying and hoping he would see what she saw. Those years were over now. She picked up her office phone and dialed the number for her current job. When her boss answered, Lisa took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "Hi, Tom. This is Lisa. I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice." There was a long pause on the other end. "Is everything okay? Did you get another job offer?" "I'm starting my own business," Lisa said, and as the words left her mouth, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not fear like she expected, but relief. Finally, she was telling the truth about who she wanted to be. After hanging up with her boss, Lisa made the second call that would reshape her life. She dialed her grandmother's number, her hands steady now despite the magnitude of what she was about to ask. "Grandma Rose? It's Lisa. I need to ask you something important." Her grandmother had always been different from the rest of the family. While Lisa's parents worried about practical things like steady paychecks and sensible choices, Grandma Rose had traveled the world as a young woman, started her own small business, and never stopped encouraging Lisa to think bigger. "What is it, sweetheart? You sound serious." "I am serious," Lisa said. "More serious than I've ever been about anything. I want to start my own clothing company, but I need money to get started. I know you've always said I could borrow against my inheritance if I really needed it. Well, I really need it now." There was silence on the other end, and Lisa held her breath. This was it. The moment that would determine whether her whispered promise to David would become reality or just another disappointment. "Tell me about this business," Grandma Rose said finally. For the next 30 minutes, Lisa explained everything. Not the simplified version she had tried to share at dinner parties, but the real plan. The suppliers she had found who paid fair wages and used organic materials. The gap in the market for truly sustainable clothing that didn't look like potato sacks. The financial projections that showed she could be profitable within 18 months if she was careful with her money. When she finished, her grandmother was quiet for so long that Lisa wondered if the call had been dropped. "Grandma Rose? Are you still there?" "I'm here, sweetheart. I was just thinking about myself at your age. I wanted to open a small restaurant, but my family thought it was too risky. My husband thought I should focus on being a good wife and mother. So I waited. I waited for permission that never came, and by the time I was ready to do it anyway, life had gotten too complicated." Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "I don't want that for you," her grandmother continued. "The money will be in your account by tomorrow. But Lisa, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter who tries to talk you out of it, you'll see this through. Win or lose, you'll know you tried." "I promise," Lisa whispered, and she meant it with every cell in her body. The loan was approved faster than Lisa had dared to hope. Within 3 days, she had money to put down deposits with manufacturers, to order her first batch of organic cotton from a cooperative in Peru, and to officially register Threads of Change as a real business. She stopped answering David's calls and texts. Every few hours, her phone would buzz with messages asking where she was, whether she was okay, when they could talk. But Lisa was beyond talking now. She was doing. Her friend Jenny showed up at Lisa's apartment on Thursday evening, looking worried and confused. "Lisa, what is going on? David is going crazy trying to reach you. He said you quit your job. He said you're starting some kind of business. This doesn't sound like you at all." Lisa looked up from her laptop where she was finalizing the designs for her first collection. Her dining room table was covered with fabric samples, pattern pieces, and notebooks filled with sketches and measurements. Her entire apartment looked like a fashion designer's workshop had exploded. "Doesn't sound like me?" Lisa asked. "What does that mean exactly?" Jenny looked around the apartment, taking in the organized chaos of someone building something real. "I mean, you've always been more of a dreamer than a doer. This is all so intense. Are you sure you're not having some kind of breakdown?" Lisa laughed, surprising herself with how genuine it sounded. "Jenny, look around. Does this look like a breakdown to you? I have real suppliers, real orders placed, real legal documents registering my business. I have a plan, and I'm following it, step by step. But what about David? What about your life? What about my life? Lisa stood up from her chair and Jenny took a step back at the intensity in her friend's eyes. Jenny, for the first time in my life, I'm actually living it. I'm not waiting for permission or approval or the perfect moment. I'm building something that matters to me. Jenny looked at the fabric samples scattered across the table. Beautiful organic cotton in rich colors, hemp blends that felt incredibly soft, recycled materials that looked brand new. She picked up one of Lisa's sketches, studying the clean lines and thoughtful details of a jacket design. These are actually really good, she said quietly. I know they are, Lisa replied. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. For the first time, Jenny seemed to really see what Lisa had been working on. Not another hobby or phase, but a genuine business built on months of research and careful planning. I owe you an apology, Jenny said finally. We never really listened to you, did we? Lisa smiled. Not with anger, but with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed external validation to know her worth. It's okay, she said. I needed to stop listening to you too. The next 3 months passed like a blur of 18-hour days, countless cups of coffee, and lessons that no business school could have taught Lisa. Every morning she woke up in her apartment that now doubled as both her home and warehouse, surrounded by boxes of fabric samples, packaging materials, and the constant hum of her sewing machine. Her first collection was simple but thoughtful, 5 essential pieces that could be mixed and matched to create dozens of different looks. A classic button-up shirt made from organic cotton, a versatile blazer crafted from hemp that felt softer than silk, a pair of pants that could work for the office or a casual weekend, a dress that was comfortable enough for everyday wear but elegant enough for special occasions, and a cardigan made from recycled wool that was somehow more beautiful than anything made from new materials. Lisa had spent weeks perfecting each design, making sure every seam was exactly right, every button placed perfectly, every measurement precise. She believed in what she was creating, but believing and succeeding in the real world turned out to be very different things. Her first major lesson came when the samples arrived from her manufacturer. Lisa opened the boxes with excitement, expecting to see her designs brought to life exactly as she had envisioned them. Instead, she found shirts with sleeves that were too long, blazers that didn't fit properly, and pants that were the wrong color entirely. She called the manufacturer immediately, her heart sinking as she explained the problems. These don't match the specifications I sent you at all, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm even though she wanted to cry. Sorry, miss, the factory manager replied with little concern in his voice. Small orders sometimes have mistakes. You want perfection, you order bigger quantities. Lisa hung up the phone feeling defeated. This manufacturer had seemed perfect on paper. Good prices, claims of ethical labor practices, and willingness to work with small orders. But now she realized that small orders meant small priority, and small priority meant careless work. She spent the next week frantically searching for a new manufacturer. At a sustainable fashion trade show in Portland, she met Roberto, a small factory owner who took one look at her designs and nodded with approval. You actually know what you're doing, he said, examining her detailed sketches and specifications. Most people who come to me have pretty pictures, but no real understanding of how clothes are made. You've thought about every detail. Roberto's factory was smaller and more expensive, but when the new samples arrived 2 weeks later, they were perfect. Every stitch was exactly where it should be. Every color matched her vision precisely, and when Lisa tried on the clothes herself, she felt proud of what she had created. But her problems weren't over. Lisa launched her website on a Tuesday morning, and within hours it crashed completely. The web designer she had hired cheaply had created something that looked good, but couldn't handle more than a handful of visitors at once. Lisa spent her entire launch day apologizing to customers via email, while frantically trying to get her site back online. When the website was finally working again 3 days later, Lisa discovered her next challenge. A fashion blogger who had agreed to review her collection posted a detailed critique that was both fair and brutal. While the materials and ethical practices behind Threads of Change are commendable, the blogger wrote, the sizing runs small across the board, and the blazer design creates an unflattering silhouette for most body types. The brand shows promise, but needs significant improvements before I could recommend it to my readers. Lisa read the review 3 times, her face burning with embarrassment. Her first instinct was to defend her work, to explain her choices, to argue with the criticism. But then she looked at the blazer the blogger had mentioned, really looked at it with fresh eyes and realized the review was right. The blazer did create an odd shape, and all of her sizing was based on her own measurements without considering how different body types would fit into her designs. Instead of getting defensive, Lisa did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She reached out to the blogger directly. "Thank you for your honest review," she wrote. "You're absolutely right about the sizing and the blazer design. Would you be willing to provide more specific feedback? I want to fix these problems for my next collection." The blogger, whose name was Rachel, responded within hours. They spent the next week exchanging detailed emails about fit, sizing standards, and design improvements. Rachel even connected Lisa with a pattern maker who specialized in creating clothes that looked good on a variety of body types. Lisa used this feedback to revise her entire collection. She expanded her size range, adjusted the blazer pattern, and created new size charts based on industry standards rather than guesswork. When she relaunched the improved collection a month later, the same blogger posted a follow-up review, praising the changes and recommending the brand to her thousands of followers. But perhaps Lisa's biggest test came on a rainy Thursday evening when David showed up at her apartment. She hadn't seen him in over 2 months, and the man standing in her doorway looked exhausted. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't been sleeping. "Well, Lisa, this has gone on long enough," he said without even greeting her. "Look at what you're doing to yourself. Your rent is 3 months behind, you've lost weight, you're living in chaos. This isn't success, it's self-destruction." Lisa looked around her apartment, seeing it through his eyes. Boxes of inventory stacked against every wall. Her dining table covered with shipping supplies. Her living room transformed into a photo studio for product shots. Her kitchen counter buried under fabric samples and business paperwork. To David, it looked like disaster, but Lisa saw something completely different. "My rent isn't behind," she said calmly. "I negotiated a deal with my landlord to use part of my apartment as business space. Those boxes you see are inventory, real products, that real people have bought. Yesterday was my best sales day yet. But look at how you're living." David gestured around the room desperately. "This isn't normal. You're destroying your life for what? Some clothes that a few people bought online?" Lisa walked over to her laptop and opened her business dashboard. "Those few people you're talking about? Last month I had customers in 12 different states. A boutique in Seattle wants to carry my blazers. A sustainable fashion blogger with 50,000 followers just asked to collaborate with me. 3 more stores have inquired about wholesale orders." David stared at the numbers on her screen, and for the first time, Lisa saw uncertainty in his eyes. "But you're living like this," he said, his voice quieter now, "surrounded by boxes, working all the time, never going out anymore." "David, this isn't failure," Lisa said, and her voice was gentle but firm. "This is what building something looks like. It's messy and hard and sometimes overwhelming, but it's not destruction, it's creation." He left that night without saying goodbye, and Lisa knew he wouldn't be coming back. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt the way she thought it would. She was too busy creating the life she actually wanted to mourn the loss of a relationship that had never really supported who she was becoming. 6 months after that whispered promise in David's kitchen, Lisa stood in front of a room full of investors at the annual Sustainable Fashion Showcase in downtown Chicago. The same hands that had once trembled when she quit her job now held her presentation notes with steady confidence. The same voice that had whispered her determination and anger now spoke clearly to an audience of successful business people who had the power to change her life. Threads of Change had grown beyond anything Lisa had imagined during those early days in her tiny office above the coffee shop. What started as 5 simple pieces had expanded into a full collection of 27 items. What began as an online-only store was now carried in 15 boutiques across 6 states, with a waiting list of 12 more stores wanting to stock her clothes. Sustainable fashion isn't just about helping the environment, Lisa told the room of investors, clicking to her next slide. It's about creating clothes that people actually want to wear, clothes that last longer than one season, clothes that make people feel good about their choices. Behind her, the presentation screen showed real numbers that even she sometimes couldn't believe. In her first year of business, Threads of Change had generated over $200,000 in revenue. Her profit margins were healthy, her customer satisfaction ratings were exceptional, and her return customer rate was an impressive 45%. But the numbers that made Lisa proudest weren't about money. They were about impact. Her supplier, Cooperative in Peru, had been able to hire 12 new workers because of her orders. Her manufacturing partner, Roberto, had expanded his facilities and upgraded his equipment. 3 other small sustainable brands had asked her for advice on getting started, creating a network of businesses all working toward the same goal. The investors asked challenging questions, and Lisa answered each one with expertise she had earned through months of trial and error. When someone questioned her marketing costs, she explained her strategy of building relationships with influential bloggers rather than paying for expensive advertisements. When another investor worried about competition from larger brands, Lisa showed them her customer loyalty numbers and explained how personal service and genuine quality created advantages that big companies couldn't match. After her presentation, Lisa stepped outside the conference center for some fresh air. The Chicago skyline stretched out before her, and she thought about how different her life looked now compared to just 1 year ago. No more tiny apartments stuffed with inventory. No more 18-hour days spent desperately trying to solve every problem herself. No more wondering if anyone would ever take her seriously. Lisa? She turned around to find Jenny waiting by the building entrance, looking nervous and slightly out of place among all the business professionals in their expensive suits. Jenny? What are you doing here? How did you even know about this? I saw the announcement in the business newspaper, Jenny said, holding up a folded copy of the Chicago Tribune. There was an article about local entrepreneurs, and there was your picture with a headline that said, "From Startup to Success, Local Designer Makes Waves in Sustainable Fashion." Lisa looked at the newspaper, seeing her own face smiling back at her from the business section. The photo had been taken at her new office space, a real office with windows and proper lighting and room for her growing team. Jenny, I owe you a huge apology, her friend continued. I saw David last week. He asked about you, wanted to know what you were doing, whether you had given up on your clothing thing yet. When I told him about this showcase, about everything you've accomplished, Jenny shook her head. I realized that we never really saw you, did we? We saw what we expected to see instead of who you actually were. Lisa smiled, not with anger or bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had proven herself to the only person who truly mattered. Herself. Jenny, I needed you not to see me, Lisa said. I needed to prove that I could do this even when nobody believed I could, maybe especially when nobody believed I could. They talked for a few more minutes, but Lisa's attention was pulled back inside when one of the investors approached her. Margaret Chen from Chicago Venture Partners wanted to discuss funding for Lisa's expansion plans. By the end of the evening, Lisa had received offers from 3 different investors. Not just small amounts either, but real money that could help her expand into sustainable accessories, launch a men's line, and maybe even open her own retail location. 2 weeks later, Lisa signed a deal with Margaret's firm for enough funding to triple her production capacity. She used part of the money to move into a proper warehouse space and hire her first full-time employees, a production manager and a customer service representative who shared her vision for ethical business practices. The day she moved out of her apartment-turned-warehouse was emotional in ways Lisa hadn't expected. As she packed the last box of inventory, she found herself thinking about all the nights she had worked until dawn at her dining room table, all the mornings she had woken up surrounded by fabric samples and shipping labels, all the moments of doubt when she wondered if she was completely crazy for believing in her dreams. Now driving to her real office with real employees and real investors believing in her vision, Those doubts seemed like memories from someone else's life. A year after signing with Margaret's firm, Threads of Change was featured on the cover of Sustainable Business magazine. The headline read, "Threading Success: How One Woman Built a Fashion Empire on Her Own Terms." Lisa kept that magazine cover framed on her office wall, not because she needed external validation anymore, but because it reminded her of something important. In the interview, the reporter had asked about her biggest challenge. The hardest part wasn't finding manufacturers or getting investors or building a customer base, Lisa had answered. The hardest part was learning to take my own dreams seriously. Once I did that, once I stopped asking permission to chase what I wanted, everything else became possible. The reporter had also asked about David, about the relationship that ended when she started her business. Some people are comfortable with who you've always been, Lisa had said, but the people who truly support you are excited about who you're becoming. I needed to surround myself with people who saw my potential instead of my past. These days, Lisa's life looked completely different. She had a team of 8 employees who shared her vision. Her clothes were sold in over 40 stores across the country. She spoke at conferences about sustainable business practices. She had been invited to serve on the board of directors for a nonprofit supporting women entrepreneurs. But the moment that meant the most to her happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when a young woman named Ashley came to her office. Ashley had driven 3 hours from a small town in Wisconsin, carrying a business plan for her own sustainable jewelry line. "I read about you in that magazine," Ashley said nervously. "I know this might sound crazy, but I have this idea, and everyone keeps telling me it won't work, but I really believe it could." Lisa listened to Ashley's presentation, seeing in the young woman's eyes the same fire she had felt that morning in David's kitchen. When Ashley finished explaining her vision, Lisa leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Ashley, let me tell you something important," Lisa said. "The only person who needs to believe in your dreams is you. But once you truly believe, once you decide to take yourself seriously, you'll be amazed at how many other people start believing too." Lisa offered Ashley advice, connections to suppliers, and something even more valuable, the knowledge that dreams backed by action were not just possible, but inevitable. As Ashley left that day practically glowing with encouragement and determination, Lisa thought about that whispered promise she had made 6 months earlier. She had asked David if he wanted to see how serious she was, but the question had never really been for him. It had been for herself.